Hello. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to tackle some of the key concepts of righteous Dopefiend, an ethnography of West Coast homelessness dating back a couple decades. This ethnography by Philippe Bourgois and Jeff Schoenberg is an intimate and comprehensive look at drug addiction and homelessness in the contemporary United States. All right, let's dive in. So this is a quote that opens the book, and I thought it's really interesting, so I included it in my slide. This one is from one of the key players in the book, Max. He says, "There's nothing righteous about dope fiends. They're assholes. They'll screw you. There's nothing enjoyable about this life." End quote. This title kind of plays on the words. The author points out kind of the contradictory nature of society having a stigma against drug addicts, but then putting them in tough situations like on the street where it's much more dangerous. So I thought that was interesting. Okay. To start with some background, the research covered about 20 individuals who were about 40 years of age when this began, and they were split between 4 or 5 camps. This focuses on San Francisco's Edgewater Boulevard between the years of 1994 and 2006. Edgewater Boulevard is actually a slang term for a shipping and warehouse district, and in that district, a network of on-ramps and off-ramps, the home to a lot of these homeless people, is nicknamed The Hole. The Hole is interesting as it's kind of a corridor for commuters feeding downtown San Francisco and the tech industry. And this would have put the time right around the dot-com boom. So that would have been an avenue for growth, definitely in sectors of the economy in San Francisco. So it's interesting because we kind of have a clear separation of classes and kind of social standing. And I put a quote at the bottom that I thought was interesting. "Ethnography is an artisanal practice that involves interpretive and political choices." So really there's an element of action, maybe an element of role play as an ethnographer, and for the authors it's much like an art. The approach. So I begin with the question that I think is kind of the overarching theme, I guess, throughout the book, and that's: how do larger societal constructs and social truths influence the experiences of everyday citizens? In their approach, the researchers employ a mindset in the vein of postmodernism, critical of social truths. They note that these truths are artifacts of power that inform our everyday life. They use participant observation as a violation of class and cultural segregation. And the cultural relativism of their work is important because it approaches the issues of drug addiction and homelessness with suspended judgment. It relies on relationships of members with homeless communities to sustain their research, and it's a balancing act between fairness and truth, so as to be honest in their work and to be honest to the individuals they're researching, but also to paint an honest picture of drug addiction and homelessness. Okay, the presentation is a mixed media ethnography using black and white photography and written word. I've included several photos throughout this slideshow, and you've seen some already. The photography is especially fascinating to me. The photographer Jeff used all black and white images, which he noted could be very effective in portraying a realist aspect, while also making for moments where you can feel the intimacy and human presence in the photos. Again, Jeff had to be extra attentive in the way he portrayed his subjects in terms of being honest and fair. Artifact of power. The authors talk about the power hierarchies that exist within society, calling back to a postmodern theory which social truths are artifacts of power. I've identified several categories of society by which power hierarchies may exist, and they are race, sex, gender, sexuality, and overall appearance. And I put a note under race because race is a complex and deeply embedded issue. It informs interpersonal interaction of everyday life. And this is reflective of hundreds of years of slavery, racism, and socioeconomic inequality. I think this is a good example for how to view the way by which social truths and larger constructs trickle into our everyday lives. Homelessness is an intersection of many issues. As we see with one of the main characters, Hank, he becomes homeless over 25 years, and that's no short time. So after having kind of unsure housing arrangements, he eventually kind of succumbs to the homeless lifestyle and begins living in a camp. This portrait of homelessness is against the backdrop of the dot-com boom I mentioned earlier, and the changes that San Francisco has undergone the last few decades. So in 1990, a 3-bedroom house in the city cost $300,000, and over 10 years it nearly doubled to where in 2000 a 3-bedroom house cost $550,000. So you do have that. There's that other pressure of the housing market, which is an issue. We also begin to see zero tolerance policies and stern reaction to homelessness. The city's mayor, Frank Jordan, instituted the Matrix program in the 90s. Under this program, tickets were issued for offenses like jaywalking and loitering, while also clearing homeless encampments. And as I saw throughout the book, there's a heavy stigma against homelessness. Sorry. Drug addiction is a complex issue as well. There are many factors, including genetics, early childhood violence, development, mental health, and barriers to drug treatment. So it's an arduous task to get clean. Most people who do get clean disengage with treatment several times. But those who are able to do it, they employ an every day is a victory mindset, in which getting through the day is really your number one priority, and thinking beyond that is not as much an issue. So it's a long road to recovery, punctuated by slip-ups and stressful life situations, as I saw throughout the book. Okay, in closing, I'd like to offer a few final thoughts. Homelessness and drug addiction are complex issues, and for individuals to be successful, it requires funding and coordination of many agencies. This picture the book paints is really foretelling of opiate addiction and homelessness that we've seen in the last couple decades. But I think the big takeaway is the ingrained forces and structures that impose these stigmas. They influence attitudes that seem to seep into our everyday life. These narratives are powerful and inform aspects of life we don't often register. So the final question I have is, how does this change me? I'd feel a little like a fool if I'd spent all this time on a project and not let it change my thinking in some way. I think the goal here is to suspend judgment and remain relative. People come from all types of experiences, and it really isn't our space to judge. Instead, come to each experience with mankind with the understanding and empathy that you'd wish to receive. I think that's how we begin to combat these artifacts of power. But thank you for watching. This was a brief discussion on Righteous Dopefiend, and I'm Tim. Thank you.